However, one Japanese bomber did find its target. It scored a direct hit with a 550-pound bomb on the light carrier Princeton. There was a series of violent explosions, and the hangar deck was engulfed in flames. As most of Princeton's crew abandoned ship, the cruiser Birmingham closed and directed the firefighting effort. Suddenly, a tremendous explosion racked the carrier and raked the crowded decks of Birmingham with a storm of deadly splinters. 229 men were killed and 236 injured, to add to more than 100 fatalities already suffered by the crew of the doomed Princeton. By now, the battleships of the Japanese Force A were just about to enter the Sibuyan Sea. Of Task Force 38's 4 groups, Task Group 1 had earlier been ordered back to base to replenish and had just been told to turn around and rejoin the force. Task Group 3 was to the north and had just borne the brunt of the Japanese air attacks. However, Task Groups 2 and 4 were well placed to attack the Japanese in the Sibuyan Sea. At 09:10 on the morning of the 24th of October, Task Group 2 launched the first of 3 strike waves, followed by another from Task Group 4, altogether 259 sorties. As they attacked the massive Japanese fleet in the Sibuyan Sea, the American planes met a wall of anti-aircraft fire. The battleships were even firing their main batteries at attacking aircraft 10 miles away. Japanese air commanders on the Philippines had chosen to attack the American carriers rather than defend Admiral Kurita's fleet, and so only a handful of Japanese fighters were patrolling over the ships. The Americans lost only 18 planes, mostly to anti-aircraft fire, while the giant battleship Musashi was hit by 19 torpedoes and 17 bombs. Yamato, her sister ship, was hit by 2 bombs, but while Yamato steamed on, Musashi sank, taking 1,000 men with her. Heavy cruiser Miyoko was another victim, damaged so badly she had to return to base. Although the American pilots had sunk Musashi and cruiser Miyoko was knocked out, no other Japanese heavy ship was significantly damaged in the Sibuyan Sea. However, just as the Japanese flyers had done in their Battle of Formosa, the American pilots greatly overestimated the number of ships they had sunk and believed they had completely neutralized the enemy fleet. When the Japanese were seen to make a course change, which would take them home, Admiral Halsey concluded that the fleet was no longer a threat to American forces at Leyte. In fact, the course change was temporary, and the Japanese Force A was still a massively powerful concentration of naval might. By the morning of October the 24th, the Japanese carriers of 3rd Fleet, led by flagship Zuikaku, was off northern Luzon. The fleet had not yet been detected by the Americans, and Admiral Ozawa's intention was to strike with the few aircraft he had, and then try to lure the American carriers after him. By 11:15, Ozawa's search planes had found the carriers of Task Group 3. 30 minutes later, Ozawa launched a 76-plane strike. It was the last strike launched by Japanese carrier aircraft in World War II. Almost all the attacking aircraft from Ozawa's carriers were intercepted by American fighters, and many were shot down. The task group's anti-aircraft fire accounted for more, and only a few Japanese planes broke through to launch their bombs and torpedoes. They failed to hit a single ship, and only a handful of Japanese aircraft survived. All that remained for Ozawa's force now was to fulfill its last suicidal function, to decoy the American carriers away from Leyte Gulf. Ozawa sent some of his ships directly towards the Americans, and as he had hoped, they were soon detected. His main fleet was spotted by late afternoon. To Admiral Halsey, the sighting of Japanese carriers only served to confirm a suspicion that had been growing in his mind for some time, that the Japanese would never mount a major operation without a carrier fleet. What Halsey could not know was that Ozawa's carriers were a spent force. Halsey's orders from Admiral Nimitz had been to watch over 7th Fleet and its landing forces at Leyte Gulf. However, if the chance came to destroy a major part of the Japanese fleet, the annihilation of the enemy was to get top priority. Believing that in the Sibuyan Sea he had already knocked the Japanese battleships out of the picture, and that Ozawa's carrier force was the main Japanese threat, Halsey ordered a full-scale pursuit. It had been Task Group 3 off Luzon that had found the carriers of Admiral Ozawa's 3rd Fleet. Admiral Halsey's orders were for Task Groups 2 and 4 to steam north and join with 3 to attack the Japanese. There was discussion of a plan to guard the San Bernardino Strait with Task Force 34, a strong force of battleships and cruisers. But the plan was not put into effect. Instead, the ships raced north with the task groups in pursuit of the Japanese carriers. Not a single American warship was left guarding the passage. By now, Force A, with its 4 surviving battleships, had left the Sibuyan Sea and was poised to pass through the San Bernardino Strait. It completed the passage in the early hours of October the 25th. Meanwhile, to the south, Force C with its 2 battleships was off Mindanao. 50 miles behind followed the cruisers of 5th Fleet. Although the Americans had lost track of the northern Japanese pincer, their aircraft had spotted Force C. And they were now sure an attempt was about to be made to reach Leyte Gulf through the Surigao Strait. Shortly after noon on October the 24th, after the Japanese had been detected approaching the Surigao Strait, every ship in 7th Fleet was alerted by the fleet commander, Admiral